his hands, ran over 70 yards for a touchdown. It was only 51 years ago, Matt. This one going to bounce. Here the goal line. Hamilton got it. Medlock after it. Medlock. Well, did it go off Langford or did it go straight out? Heads up play by Medlock to get down there.
You can bat that out. Medlock saw that, was sprinting down.
This could be Winnipeg football.
Winnipeg last touched the ball before it went out of bounds. Be their ball. First down.
Winnipeg ball was not kicked out.
What a tremendous
deflected
play.
off Medlock's knee
where no one else can get to it.
Here it comes. One back to Rogers. Jump ball. And it's intercepted. Marcus Sales went vertical and brings it down.
Down inside the red zone, Eric Rogers, the number one target for the Stampeders. No matter who's playing quarterback, ball a little bit underthrown, gave Sales a chance to get back, but he climbs the ladder to go up and get it. A little bit underthrown, that gives Sales a chance, and he gets there.
He's got
style. He gets there in style.
Second and a yard, it is Wayne Moore, and it's a big first down. And with one of the hits of the year.
Oh, man.
Abbotsford, BC product, and Wayne Moore popped up, but man, he got dusted.
A safety coming downhill on a hit and running play like that.
Same page consistently in order to turn this around.
Evans gets hit as he throws, and a great catch by Jalen Acklin, who caught it on his own bounce.
And boy, did Dane Evans eat a shot here as he's getting this ball away. His receiver picked him up on the other end.
Yeah, and the ball can touch the ground as long as it's in possession.
You can see he secures it with both hands right here. And you just watch the ball, how sturdy it is in his hands there, and it doesn't move. That's just a heck of a grab.
Hairolahu comes out. A miss, a possible single still ties the game. And this is a huge attempt for Liram Hairolahu. The hold by Evans. The kick is blocked. It's blocked. Calgary football. Trey Roberson just leapt to the sky and squatted that down. Not in my house. And that block just blocked Hamilton's opportunity to win.
Pressure coming. Riley stands in, goes deep, and oh, did you see that? What a remarkable touchdown. Just another day at the office for Brian Burnham.
Come on. He almost makes it look routine, and it's not. This is tremendous concentration. Tips it to himself with coverage all over him.
What's up? Second and 7. Valero bouncing around in some trouble. All the way back at the 25. Launching back to the end zone. Touchdown! Darvin Adams!
Boy, that just got really spicy, as you mentioned, with this magic from Zach Collaros. Spinning out of there, finding Darvin Adams, and on the run, putting it right where he had to.
Zach's turned back the clock for us tonight. And if you're a CFL fan, you got to be happy for him.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Near hash. Bounces once, no yards. There goes Dedman again. Stays on his feet. Devontae Dedman still on his feet. No way! Are you kidding me? Foot race now. Dedman down the sideline. An amazing return by Devontae Dedman.
In the words
How
of Milton Steele,
did he do that?
oh my
Goodness! Devontae Dedman with one of the most spectacular returns you will ever see.
The penalties declined. Touchdowns.
The Devontae Dedman show continues.
his fellow William and Mary alum that we compared him to earlier had a nickname.
Go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci, Candid Frank to many of you. And of course, usually we do a show called CFL Talk. Well, we haven't had a chance to do the show. We've taken a little bit of a break, maybe because of the frustration that since we talked last, the season has been canceled. There is no season, and we'll talk about that. We can talk also about the fact that many a player, Vernon Adams, the most recent, has opted out of his contract, meaning he's going to try and get work in the NFL. But he made it very clear, and I'm sure it's the same statement for a lot of players, and including I spoke to McLeod Bethel Thompson, who what he said exactly was, I'd rather leave that money for someone else. So he wanted to go look for work. He hasn't given up on his CFL career, as Vernon Adams stated completely with, there was no doubt. He said if he comes back, it'll be with the Montreal Alouettes, and it will be to turn this organization into a dynasty. A lot of other players have done the same thing by opting out. We also have had, how shall I put this? A question that we're going to ask our guest. We're hoping that Matt Shinetti will be able to be here with us. A question I will ask him from the perspective of ownership and the diverse, different types of game plans, business plans that all the organizations have. For example, MLSE is a corporation, full-bred corporation. Saskatchewan Roughriders are a community-owned team. Edmonton Eskimos take their profit and they basically do things for football in the Alberta community. So you have those two polarities, I think, in the Canadian Football League. We'll talk about that as well. But for now, those three are good enough for you to chew on, folks. Let's bring in David Morassutti. David, long time no see. It's something that I always look forward to, talking CFL with you, and also Leafs before we go on the air.
Yes, exactly. It's obviously not the best of circumstances to be talking about the CFL. Obviously, you and I spent, I don't know how many hours talking about this league and everything that was going on. And it's unfortunate that this is the conversation we have to have, but it's not one that I think it was one we were kind of expecting based on how everything was coming about the last few months.
Well, we can dive into a topic, and I think that the most important topic to talk about since, we haven't been here and now we're back, is, of course, the season finally canceled. As you know, I never felt it was going to come back, and the basic reason for me was they could not afford to play safe. The CFL, in my opinion at the time, and as I think it turns out, see me patting myself on the back, figured out that they couldn't afford it. It's just that simple. But you know what? It didn't take a genius to figure that out. This is a league that relies, and we all know it relies on gate. It relies on the people walking in, those turnstiles turning. That is where they get their profit. What they use as far as the TSN TV contract, it basically helps the league function, David.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were basically listening to everyone talk about what the CFL was going to need to get a season going. And as much as we heard about, they secured the bubble city, they had made the talks with health, public health in Winnipeg, and then they were able to get the players on board with what their season was going to look like. But I said, and I kept saying it, as long as the government was not committing to a season, it was just not going to happen. And unfortunately, that's what happens. And I've been flip-flopping the last few weeks since the decision has been made. Just you try to and I've been seeing a lot of blame being passed around, whether it's the government, whether it's ownerships, the CFL owners, whether it's Randy Ambrosie. There's been a lot of blame shifted around, and I guess it's fair they in this sort of situation, it shouldn't be put onto just one person, especially when you consider how much I think Randy Ambrosie has had to take, with the season being canceled. It's the last thing you want as a commissioner. But, just truly, you just explained that for a lot of these owners, this isn't their main ticket to make money. This is actually something I wouldn't say see it as charity, but see it as something that they're investing in, but not expecting much or anything in return. And that's the unfortunate part, because that, I think, made the owners not willing to invest more than they might have already had to get this this season going.
Well, there's only a couple of teams, for example, Ottawa, Toronto, BC, Calgary, that are built to keep their profit, if they have any. The rest of the teams, I'm sure I'm making a mistake, but just to make the point.
Hamilton is probably in there.
Hamilton, yeah. I didn't mention Hamilton for a reason, because they have an owner who doesn't spare. I don't think he makes that much money just by virtue of how he runs that business. Okay. He runs that business to win, not for profit. You could almost say, and honestly, David, you and I both know, in a way, that is a community team. I mean, he has that team. He bought that team because his brother passed away, and he promised his brother he would buy the Ticats and make them competitive. And in the Canadian Football League, to be competitive is expensive in relation to the profit margin that you can acquire. So even if he makes a profit, I don't think it's that much, and I don't think it's worth stating that it is that much. The only reason I exclude them is for that reason. It's call it a compassion point on my part. But you are right. You know, they are another team that can go into the profit margin because they're not a community-owned team.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's where, because I know with when we were discussing who this would hurt more, we discussed that this probably hurts those community teams, you know, Regina, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, more so than the private entities, because now they're not, I mean, some of them have to bear the cost for certain expenses, but they don't have to accrue the cost for a lot of other things. And it's unfortunate that that's sort of where, you know, this decisions lie. We discussed that. I said that if the CFL was not going to have a season, it should have been done a long time ago, because then what happened was you had the CPL, they're playing soccer right now. You have the Canadian Elite, the CEBL, they had their tournament. And I'm putting the CFL along those ranks because you cannot compare them to the NHL, the NBA, and MLB in terms of how they are designing their season. Like, you know, it's just the circumstances are a little bit different, especially for NBA and NHL, who already had a season start. The CFL didn't have a season start, so they had to make a choice whether they were even going to attempt to start anything that hadn't even started yet.
I appreciate your point, David. I won't disagree with you, but I say that only in words. There is the issue that the Canadian Football League is a professional sports league in a way that those other leagues are not. The kind of expenses that those other leagues have, they are accustomed to not really having that much gate revenue. So not having the fans at their games is not as big a sacrifice as it is for the Canadian Football League, and as it is for every other professional league. Insert joke about the Argos at this point. The Argo fans, we can do distancing. The people go to the Argo games. We open up those other stands and we could do social distancing a little bit. Just kidding. A little pandemic humor, if there is such a thing. There is the thing about, you know, the league not playing and about the commissioner. I think when distance between the situation and the scenario that took place, I think even the commissioner himself will, and at some point admit that maybe he has some responsibility there for things that he could have done differently. And you pointed at it, but you didn't point at him. And I will at this point say, I'm on a roll for being mean to you. Now I'm going to be mean to the commissioner. I'm such a horrible person. He shouldn't have built up people's hopes. What I believed then, I believed at the beginning, I believed in the middle, and I believed at the end, that they could not afford to have a season. And he should have just told the players, look, guys, we can pay you, or we can pay to have this whole enterprise be safe, that we're going to do. But we can't do both. The only way we're going to get to do it is if we go to the government says, here's some free money, spend it to have a season. You know, the money that they were getting from the government, they should have made it as simple as this. Whether they did or whether they didn't, I don't know, because I wasn't in the room. We would like to have a season, and we need your help, because our league, unlike the other leagues, depends on fan participation as far as going into the stadiums. That's what makes us go. We need money from you to have a season. Would you help our fans have a season? Because without the fans, we can't have a season. And they shouldn't have come out with $150 million. What they should have said was, and what Randy should have done, and this is the mistake that he made, he should have found out from the NHL, the NBA, and he has an inside group named MLSE that could have given them a roadmap to how much it would cost to play safely, to create a bubble, and what it would take to sustain that bubble, and then maybe factor in an extra $5 million or whatever. I'm just speculating, right? Yeah. And then say, that's what we need. Here's why we need it, and tell the players, okay, now how do we work paying you, right? And then get to that. I don't know whether you go with deferred payments, whether the league, if they get some money and they say if they wanted to make the bill from the government a little more, they say, listen, all we ask from you, Mr. Government, whoever you are, Mr. or Mrs. Government, we split the salary of the players. If whatever we're willing to pay the players, are you willing to match it? And then that's how the owners could have done something proactive, make a little bit of a sacrifice, and then show the teamwork that league has. They missed that chance, David. And that's a very, I understand that it's very simple-minded, what I just said. And I understand it probably won't survive the gambit that is reality, but it's just something that I was thinking.
I agree with you on a lot of the things. I think first and foremost, Randy should have gone to the board of governors, the owners, and say, look, your responsibility first and foremost is your team and your expenses, what your players would cost, what your staff would cost. That's on you, because the last few years we've talked about the CFL making life a little bit easier for these owners when it comes to the management cap. The salary cap is not that much. It's more so the expenses that the players accrue, travel and all those sort of things. Randy should have gone to the CFL owners. We don't know if he did. He probably did, but hopefully that conversation was, you guys worry about your costs with your teams. We will try to get the government to help us when it comes to testing and all those other things that are very expensive, especially, the city of Winnipeg, and, what it would have cost to host in the bubble there, what they would have needed, because these players had, and very rightfully so, had things that they would need in order to get the bubble to be set up properly for them, just like the NHL and just like the NBA. So I think that was, the thing is, there was not a lot of clarity or just honesty about what exactly were the owners willing to do, what exactly was, and we already know the government part. The 150, that number should never ever have been mentioned, because he was talking about years down the road. Mm-hmm. You're looking for the government to help you with this year. Don't talk about the next few years, because honestly, the government doesn't. They just want to know what they need, what you needed for this year. I don't think they really cared too much about helping the league survive in terms of the next few years. That's something the league has to figure out too. And unfortunately, Randy came across in a very negative way in that aspect. And it's very unfortunate, because we don't know how much was him, who came up with the proposals, what were the proposals, who's the one that's kind of pushing those forward. We know Randy, as a commissioner, should be having a big say in all of it. So, yeah, the 150 really, because I kept hearing about the 150, and how many times I had to correct people on what that 150 really meant. And it was more so around $50 million. 150 and $50 million are two very separate amounts. And unfortunately, that was not communicated properly. And, then it came down to the end where the CFL said we were asking for an interest-free loan of $30 million, which, when you look at how governments have been giving out money to corporations during hardships, we've seen it. We don't know if you always expect some interest to be paid back, But when you're considering what the CFL, they're not making money. They're not looking to turn a profit. They're just looking to make sure that they don't further dig themselves into debt. And that's
But
the
David,
unfortunate part.
that's the comment that kind of irritated me.
Yes.
And here's why. It irritated me because, as far as I understand, right now borrowing money is at the best case scenario. Right now, borrowing money 1%. That's why the government can afford to write money, because to pay it back, it's at 1% right now. So basically, if that's all, if Randy had said that, he said, look, we want to be treated like somebody who's getting a mortgage. We want to be treated like somebody who's a business that's borrowing money. We want to be treated like the government. They're only paying 1%. In some cases during this pandemic, there was literally zero interest for the money that you borrowed. The government was backing zero interest. So for Randy to say that, maybe I don't understand economics, but I do understand politics. And if you mix politics with economics, you get politics. So, and you mix politics with health, you get politics. So at the end of the day, this whole conversation, he was going to the politicians. What do you think this was going to be? It was going to be politics. It wasn't going to be about economics. And he should have said the right words that I don't think he said. He said, forget about the interest free. Give us some money and we'll pay you back down the road. You tell us how much we have to pay you back. Because when someone says an interest-free loan, I think today an interest-free loan compared to an interest-free loan 15 years ago, there's a big, big difference. So, it's all about how it's presented. And Randy was tarred a little bit that it wasn't a presentation that was done well. It was a presentation that was incomplete by virtue of the players not being there. Exactly. And it was incomplete, period. And the expectations that he went in there with, he raised the bar a little bit too high. He should have gone in there. I don't think they needed $150 million to save the season. Like you said, that was asking for help down the road. And they have to do like everybody else does. Again, this is a political thing. What do they do in politics when they run into a logjam? They kick the can down the road. And that's what they have to do. They have to kick the can down the road and go, okay, let's survive this year. Let's do let's do a bubble and let's get a season going. Let's make our fans happy. It didn't happen. And David, we all witnessed the reaction from players, fans, owners. It was all negative after the season was canceled.
Exactly. I mean, it's very hard to spin that positively. There's really just, when you have the players expressing their disappointment, when you have fans, very disappointed because they felt, as you said, strung along these last few months, waiting for a decision, and they kept saying, by this date you need to hear something, by this date you need to hear something, and we were just not hearing anything. And now there's just a lot of, now more so than I think ever, there's questions about the future of the CFL. Now there's the people who always make the comments on, oh, now this means the CFL is dead. I don't think it means that, because frankly, those are people who just don't understand what the CFL means to this country, really. I think if it ever got to that situation, the government probably would have stepped in a little bit more than what they did just to save the season. I think those are two very different scenarios in my mind, especially when you consider, the communities that rely on the CFL, not just for entertainment, because people always bring up the entertainment aspect, but also for income. I have friends now who lost jobs, who lost income because of this decision, because of what happened.
Yeah, and it's true. There, no matter how big the Canadian Football League is, the function of the Canadian Football League is such that it has, a spin-off effect in a lot of different areas. As much as we can debate how many fans go at every stadium, the fact is every stadium has employees, every stadium has ticket ushers, every stadium has beer sellers, popcorn sellers, food sellers, all the security. There's a lot of people that work, that are unable to work because of what's going on. And a lot of them, many of them, work the TFC game and the Argo game when we're talking about the CFL. So, and a lot of these other teams in the Canadian Football League, like Calgary, are connected to the Calgary Flames, and you have that kind of thing going on. So, the employees suffer, the players suffer, the ownership suffers, the momentum that the Canadian Football League had before the pandemic, for whatever it's worth, was hurt. And now they have to basically restart again and gain the confidence of the fans that they can have a season. A lot of people, the only good news I can say is we're not worried till next June. So, the pandemic this fall is going to, if the experts are correct, and I'm talking about the health experts, not the politicians.
Exactly.
It's going to get ugly before it gets better at the end of this year. Christmas, November, the regular flu months will now have a different kind of flu. And that is, of course, the virus will now be part of this, the landscape when it comes to healthcare and health concerns. So, there's a lot of stuff, and all that stuff I just said is the reason why when the CFL said, please give us some money, give us $150 million. It isn't that the government didn't want to give it to them. It's that the government is giving a lot of money away to people with bigger concerns than those that are concerned about the Canadian Football League. And I hope nobody doubts how much I enjoy covering the Canadian Football League, how much I would love to see a season, how much I don't like to see when the CFL ends in trouble. But the reality is, folks, that the government has more to concern itself than the Canadian Football League. And that's a direct comment to all the fans and the owners we've heard complain about the fact that the government did what they did. I cannot argue with the government's decision. Why? Because not everyone in Canada is a CFL fan that pays taxes.
Mm-hmm. And not all the players are Canadian either. Unfortunately. I mean, and most of them rely, and this is the part that really does hurt me. There are a lot of players who rely on this to support their family. Like, it's a job. It's not like a lot of other athletes who are making a lot of money for this. This is to support their family. And that's the part that's unfortunate throughout all this as well, is that the players were left wondering. And I think most of them saw the writing on the wall when it got to a certain point. It would have been nice, and this is the other thing too, it would have been nice if a lot of these players that are now pursuing NFL opportunities were able to do that even a month earlier before training camps open, because now they're scrambling to try to get one chance, really one chance to make a team. I mean, some of them have been picked up. Most of them have been the top players in the CFL, but it's more so the other players that really have to push to get themselves noticed in these cases. And the other thing about, I drove by BMO Field last week. That hurt me. That really hurt, because it's my favorite thing in the summer to be at BMO Field. Even if the stadium isn't at full capacity, there is an atmosphere there. You miss it. It wouldn't have been there. Let's also not forget that I wouldn't have been there. Frank, you likely would not have been there. I don't think we would have been granted access into the bubble. So it would have just been nice to have CFL football around, because it's what we look forward to, right? So what happens next year? And I guess that's the question next, right? Is, I think Montreal Impact actually had some fans at their latest game.
Yes, they did. Respecting social distancing, they did.
I think we will see the ability to have some fans, depending on where we are, come, you said June of next year. We could be making some progress depending on how everything shakes out health-wise. We're just hoping. But if let's say
David, I have confidence in humanity as much as we can cast as dispersions towards humanity. I also happen to think that, we were given thumbs for a reason. And I think we can exercise that reason. And I think they can come up with something. We can agree or disagree with politicians, what they say, what they don't say. We can argue about what's true, what's not true. But the fact remains that, there are many ways to attack this problem. And if social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands, and tracing is how you solve the problem, or at least mitigate it, to the point where if you get sick, they have medications and or treatments that'll be able to terminate the illness. And then on top of that, have a vaccine that some 60, 70, hopefully 80% taken, to create herd immunity. All that stuff can be true by June really easily. And I say that not to build up anybody's hopes, but to me, it's logic. No more different than me saying back in April that there won't be a CFL season because they can't afford to create a bubble. Same thing. It's called reality. And the reality is we got to stop being defeatist and think that the world's coming apart. Yes, it's shaking drastically. Who more than CFL fans are feeling that earth tremble under their feet? Who more than CFL fans are hurt and disappointed by something that they love watching, that, yes, it isn't food for the tummy, but it's food for the soul. And that's what it's all about. It's all about getting together. And I can speak to this. We, people who love the CFL, whether you're a fan or whether you're a reporter, whatever you are, we miss getting together to celebrate our game. Yeah. Not celebrating it. And part of it is being there. Part of it is being in the tailgate. Part of it is sitting on the couch with other people that you're enjoying watching the game with. That's all gone. And that hurts. And that is, to me, why the reality, I'm hoping that things can come back again come June. It gives us plenty of time for the league to start correcting some of the problems that they have. And if I can change the subject, move the subject over a little bit, David, this now gives the ownership group an opportunity to identify their differences, to consider what's best moving forward. Because one thing I've heard, I think you've heard too, a lot of times the decisions that are made by the Canadian Football League governors is concessions by one side to the other side. They can't, there is very little common ground. And in this pandemic situation, I hope they figure out, your opinion, on if and when they can get together and create this more universal thinking process to make the league better and more available for people to take part in, including fans and players.
I think so. I think, this is a wake-up call for the league in a very big way. That first and foremost, the current model not the current model, the model that this league has been run for years is outdated in terms of how the revenue is brought in and how the league makes money. I also think ownership has to realize that what's important to them, what's important as an owner of a team, right? Your main role is you're in charge of everything that happens with the team. I don't think many of these business owners want to see their team fold or see their team fail because of everything that's going on. It looks really bad on them, right? So I think that's another thing that they're going to have to show a little bit more pride as an owner in wanting to make this work in that regard. And, I think this for the CFL, for the league, those who are running the league, it is well overdue time to try to reach out to the generation that isn't watching this league right now. I mean, I feel like I'm in a rare group of people who watch the CFL at my age. I'm 26. I don't get to talk CFL a lot with a lot of people. There's a very, very small group of people in comparison to the other leagues I talk to. Frank, you're one of them. I can count on my two hands how many people in my age group I can talk about with this league. In comparison to all the other leagues that I get to talk to with my friends, I can only count on my two hands, which unfortunately is, I think, a problem. I think how people watch the league is also somewhat of a problem because the league, not everybody has television. Not everybody watches TV the same way anymore. Sure, there's radio, but I mean, I don't know how many people my age even listen to the radio. Some only do it out of necessity when they're just not able to be on their phone or on a tablet. And I think you have to find a way to reach those people. The CFL is doing fantasy football, which is great, but that's something that they should be pushing towards. Young people love fantasy. It's just another way for you to follow the league and be interested in the league. I know people who are casual NFL fans, but because they have a fantasy football team, they're watching those games every week. They're invested into it. Fantasy is another one. Betting. That's the other thing is, unlike all the other leagues, betting and gambling have become a lot more prevalent with the younger generation. And I mean, that's just another way that you can make the CFL another viable league. And I mean, the problem is Canadian, laws on gambling, are not the same as they are everywhere else.
They're changing. They're evolving.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to offer this in as far as distraction.
Yeah.
The Canadian Football League owners don't have the distraction of making a lot of money. And by that, I mean a lot of owners of sports franchises, they make money. And making money is something that they can hang their hat on. What we have with the Canadian Football League owners, and it doesn't matter which owners we're talking about, this is every owner. And we talked about Hamilton. We can look at Brayley in BC. We can look at MLSC here in Toronto. And the rest of the teams for sure. It's not about profit. They don't suffer from the distraction of profit. They love the game. They're here. They're involved. They're a part of the Canadian Football League simply because of the game. The CEO that left, Brody's dad, that left, he was football family. Brody is a granddaughter of the love of football. The people involved in the Canadian Football League, it's more than just about profit. And that is why I think the fans are so defensive, because they know you notice hardly any of them blamed owners, right? They didn't blame them. You know what I mean? And the reason is because they did not have the blame to be carried. Yes, they got mad at the commissioner. Yes, they wish the government had done better. And I think that's the reason, because even the Canadian Football League fans know that ownership in the Canadian Football League is not distracted from profit. They don't suffer that distraction. They are focused. Let's get our game going. And that's what they do. And that's what makes me proud of being a follower of the Canadian Football League, David.
It is.
Your view?
No, I think there's many owners who are passionate about putting money towards a team, whether they get money back. And that speaks to not many business owners are willing to do it. It's why for many years, the CFL wasn't able to get an owner for the Alouettes. The CFL was running the Alouettes at one point, because they couldn't find a passionate owner. That's probably the number one criteria for a CFL owner. You have to have passion for this game, because guess what? It's what
you can only have one of two.
Yes, exactly.
Money, profit, or no team.
Exactly.
But if you want a team, profit isn't guaranteed. The best hope you have, and I'm sure every new ownership group that gets involved with the Canadian Football League, the first question they probably ask, and please don't take this wrong way, CFL and company, but how much money am I going to lose?
Yeah. If I'm putting an investment in your league and you're asking me to put forth money, is it worth it for me in the long run? Because at some point the losses get too much for these guys as well. For not all of them, but for some it does. my question here is, what can these owners do? Because a lot of them would love to make money, even if they were to break just even or just a little over even, make a small profit. What do they have to do? I think that's why they like Randy Ambrosie, because Randy feels like he has areas that he thinks he can exploit to make the CFL a more viable league in terms of resources and revenue. I'm skeptical because, we hear about CFL 2.0. We heard about this for the ever since Randy kind of took over and was bringing out the initiative of global football. I appreciate the desire to bring in other sources of revenue into this league, because that's how a lot of these leagues do it. The NHL doesn't just rely on the revenue from Canada and the US. There's China. There's the international. There's an international accords with other leagues. The NFL, when it comes to playing games in England and Mexico. The NBA, when it came to China, and we saw how the NBA's relationship with China, when that was in jeopardy, that brought apart. Oh, now that means the revenue, how much you bring in, takes.
Hold on a second. We shouldn't be that pissed at China.
Well,
sorry, that was my injection.
Okay, I'm just saying, but it shows when
and some of the players. I'm sorry, and some of the players too, David. It isn't just about the game, and there's players who have some financial interest in China. We know who they are, and we've heard how they got to be careful what they say here in North America, because they're listening in China, and you can get in a lot of trouble. This goes to what you were saying before about a business plan and who are your customers. You're talking now about outside there, and I want to remind the listeners that's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci, and we're watching CFL Talk, and I want to remind people what you said earlier, that not only is it good to pay attention to new customers outside of the regular Canadian Football League fan base, they've got to do something about improving even the Canadian fans in the Canadian Football League. And we can point at various cities that, it's common knowledge. We don't even have to mention them. Yeah. Toronto, we know who they are, and Vancouver, and we know what needs to be done. And so that's what they need to work on too, David. Now, I understand the league has to become more of a world league. I get that. I'm all for it. Bringing players in, raising interest everywhere. But I think you're right. They have to do something about local fans as well. I'm not saying don't worry about the external fans outside of Canada or even outside of North America, being the US. Now you can probably throw Mexico in there too. But figuring out how to get that main fan base going to the games, because that's really the important thing. We're worried about BC, the fans, it's dropping off there. Even in Saskatchewan, people are complaining the prices are a little too much. Winnipeg, they won the Grey Cup this past season. There are a lot of challenges for the Canadian Football League. And some of the basics of a league, they're not ringing the bell right. They need to figure out how to get that tone going.
Here's a couple of things I will mention. We've discussed this before, so some of the things I'm going to bring up aren't exactly new. But there are some fans who feel they're underserved in certain areas in terms of the CFL. One of them being, how many fans have you seen, Argos fans especially, with jerseys of current players? Not many.
Because I know a lot of the diehard Argo lifer types. As soon as Ricky Ray retires, you got to replace that shirt. Now, Wilder had a couple, but I get your point. Other than the diehard willing to buy the seventh unit, the seventh jersey, for people who only have one jersey, it'll be one that goes back to Pinball's era. We see a lot of those.
I mean, when I'm at Argos games, I see a lot of Ricky Ray jerseys, which is great. Ricky Ray deserves every fan that has that jersey because of what he did for this team. But I just look and I see a lot of pinball jerseys. I see a lot of older jerseys. So that tells you that you're not making money on your merchandise because it's not being purchased. And fans want it. Players, Alden Darby said to me he wanted to buy a bunch of jerseys for his family. And he could not get jerseys made. You're a sports league. Every TFC you can buy player jerseys.
Well, that we should hang just strictly on the Argos because
yes.
that belongs on the to-do list for the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah.
We've heard over the years that it's hard to purchase Argo paraphernalia, different Argo stuff. I know that Walmart, for those of you that are watching that want Argo stuff, Walmart does a pretty good job of selling stuff that's directly Argo related. An up-to-date logo and all that kind of stuff.
Sport Check has some stuff too. I've seen it, but it's not a lot. But I'm saying, if you want fans to have an attachment with the team, wouldn't you like to get, a player's jersey on a team that you're a current player that you're watching right now? So maybe that's more of an Argos thing, because I'm not sure how. I'm sure in other cities, especially Hamilton, they have
Saskatchewan.
They have their shop. Saskatchewan.
They get shirts for people that they're talking about trading for.
Exactly, right?
That was a joke, but
it's a good joke.
It's believable.
It's very believable.
Not true, but it's believable.
But that's the thing right there, Frank, is that you're not drawing interest in ways that other leagues are drawing interest. Merchandise is a big seller for a lot of these leagues. What was the other one I was going to mention? Because merchandise was a big one for me. When it comes to tickets, if that's supposed to be your bread and butter, then you should be doing everything you can to make sure people are buying tickets, and that people. The biggest thing that I think for a lot of CFL fans, there shouldn't be any that are saying, "I don't want to buy a ticket because it's too expensive." Well, I
don't think that's a problem.
No,
I don't think that's a problem. In Saskatchewan, it became a problem only because of the debt they're carrying for that beautiful stadium. That's the reality of it.
Yes.
Football is a very expensive sport. When you consider how expensive it is, an Argo ticket is not that expensive. Hamilton tickets, I don't think I would call them very expensive either, or any of the other tickets around the country. But it's only 10 games. That's all they have. 9 regular season games and 1 exhibition game. That's not a lot of opportunity to load the stadium, and that's the difficulty you have even in the stadiums like in Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Hamilton, Edmonton, Calgary, all those cities. Ottawa is I think on the same level. They had a little bit of a hiccup this year. They had a little bit of trouble getting fans, a tiny bit. But at the end of the day, David, it's about the league being competitive. And when I say the league, I mean all the teams. And games that finish with a 60-point spread, they hurt every team. Mm-hmm. We can sit here in Toronto and report on how badly the Argos play and live in our little tower, our little silo, and say, oh, this is all about the Argos. This is all about them screwing up. This is all about. The problem is it affects the rest of the league as well, because there's a level of professionalism that's required to create the belief that the game is competitive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if the games aren't competitive, they're not the thing to go see. They're not, the demand is diminished by the poor quality of games, which is why places like Toronto and BC and Montreal having better seasons was important. In Montreal, we've seen a revival of the fan base there. BC's teetering. The Argos have a lot of work to do. And that reflects badly or, negatively on the rest of the league. That's one of the things they have to correct. They have to be competitive as a league, David.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 9 teams. So every team should be, every team should be competitive to a certain extent. They're not all going to be juggernaut teams like that. To build a good team, that takes time, and really, development and all that stuff. But to have a team like that home opener, imagine, watching that game, you were pretty much taken out of that at the second quarter. You don't want to be a new fan, hear about how great the football is, and then one team allows a team to score 63 points and they only get 17. Or, I mean, in a game like that, I mean, defense goes out the window. So 17 points for that team is not even that much. That's something I think that hurts the CFL as well. How bad the Argos have been lately. BC, I mean, Calgary being as dominant as they have been, and yet, guess what? That hasn't really brought in, I think, the same amount of interest, or fans kind of were like, oh yeah, we're dominating every year, but we're not even winning the Grey Cup every year.
Flip that thought, David. Flip that thought to where you're an Argo fan sitting in BMO, watching the Argos beat somebody 60-5. Now, you will leave more satisfied, but the person you brought to experience the game will have basically the same reaction they would if it's flipped.
Yeah.
Because, well, this is no fun.
It's not competitive.
Right? Because at the end of the day, what really matters is the excitement of the competition. Yes. The excitement about not knowing how the game's going to go. For home fans, not knowing how the game's going to go, but you know that your team has a chance to win. That's what makes it exciting. If they win automatically, the excitement is just basically a laugher, and a laugher it doesn't offer the same kind of emotion and the same kind of attraction to the game, because it almost seems, and I hate to say this, it seems like Little League football, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, see, like, it's the other thing too, and what went wrong last year for the Argos, they could lose as many games as they did, but how many of them were they just out of it? And that was just a big problem, because at least if they're close, at least if they're within 3 points or within a touchdown at the end of the game, and they're neck and neck with the team, the fans are at least satisfied that they gave their best, and there was as you said, there was competitiveness on both sides. I think that speaks a lot to just having an entertaining product. Like Randy Ambrosi kept saying, our brand of football is exciting. Our brand of football is this. Well, if your brand of football is exciting, as you say, it should be the hottest ticket in town. And unfortunately,
well, David, I think we just had a seance, and we brought the Argos season from last year back to life, and we beat it some more. We beat the dead horse some more.
Just when we thought we were done with it, I
think we can move on from that. The point is, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
I know. No,
we've talked about that, and I think people are tired of hearing about that.
Yep.
I think what Argo fans want on this point is that Pinball Williams was brought in. Pinball Williams. Jesus. Tiger Williams. I got Tiger on the brain. Pinball was brought back into this thing with the Argos for the sake of at least branding this team with a guy that knows how to win, who has a history of winning with the Toronto Argonauts. His first year was not as successful as he'd hoped. They introduced a new coach, basically a new way of doing business. A new team, theories as far as bringing in local players to make, the team care, I guess, more about winning because they're local guys. This is I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. How do you think their theory of bringing in Canadian players, local players that have, as their community, and they get to play football at home in front of their friends and family, are they on the right track, do you think? Is this a beneficial ploy on their part?
These players, and I'm talking about the local players, all have the same goal. They just want to win together. Like they're when I talk to Natey J, he's someone that I talk to quite often. Him and Juwan, Brissett, those are guys that train together. They talk. They when they were brought in, they were so excited to be able to have the opportunity not only to play together, have their like as you said, have family come. That it just means more. We talk about in hockey where a player goes back and wins with the team that he grew up cheering for. It just means so much more. I think for a lot of these guys, they wanted not only to have that success on the field, but they wanted to do it off the field too. These are players who are invested in making sure the Argos were not only a good team on the field, but, something they could be proud about when they go and, talk to schools, go to, local communities, which, I mean, we don't know when that's going to happen now. But they were willing to go above and beyond to make this a really great experience for this team. And they had that taken away from them, unfortunately, for this year.
Part of the plan, which is about Canadian players coming back to play in Toronto, local players, they also, all the imports, players and coaches and management, they're all being asked by the ownership group and Pinball, Clemens. They're being asked by them to live here.
Yeah.
Not out of a suitcase, but actually take residence here. They're being asked to do that by virtue of them getting to know the community and giving the community a chance to get to know them. I think that's critical in the Canadian Football League. It is something that is rather normal in the Canadian Football League when it comes to the players. There is a very close relationship that's had between the players and the fans, which is why one of the biggest griefs the fans have is the fact that players that they love so much get traded. So, it's a two-edged sword, right? The fact that they love their players, they still love them when they go, and it isn't a nice experience or a nice thought to look at that jersey and go, oh no, they're gone. But that would be my thing that I have. Maybe it's my age, maybe it's the history of me watching the Canadian Football League. The transitory nature of the players and how they change teams so often, I think, does not serve the Canadian Football League well, in my opinion. If there was a way to slow that down, that would be great. I really believe that.
I brought that up. I mean, we've talked about that. It's been my biggest issue covering this team, especially. How many times I have to, introduce myself to a new player. I would like to have players I can talk to year after year after year. There's a couple, but you have to kind of redo your introductions with every player, and as a coaching staff to have to bring in new players every year is such a pain. You ask any coach, they would love to keep these guys. The part that disappointed me about the James Wilder Jr. situation, this is a player who moved his family from the States to Canada, bought a house in Toronto, was fully committed to making Toronto his place. And then the doubts started to creep in, and then he made the unfortunate, the tough decision to, eventually retire because of the way everything was going on with the CFL. His age coming into it and having other opportunities, but stuff like that. If you have a player that's invested on the field and off the field, isn't that someone you want to keep around? And Frank, I'm sure that's what you were talking about, having those guys that are willing to take an investment both on and off the field for this team.
That's and let's not just say this is all about the Canadian Football League, because in sports in general, continuity serves teams well. And if you're changing coaches and GMs all the time, you and I both know, and I think fans know this as well, and the experts know this definitely, that along with a new GM comes a new coach. Along with a new coach comes new players. So, everybody wants their own people, right? Mm-hmm. So it creates, again, that transitory behavior by the league where they have players moving in and moving out. And the fans, God willing, fans would love to be able to get to know their players, because that's what CFL fans do. They spend a lot of time waiting outside the stadium to shake their hands, going to practice, shaking their hands, talking to them, getting to know them. And we can blame that on the CFL players because they're so approachable. Damn guys.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I don't think there is an athlete I've seen more approachable than a CFL player in terms of with fans and with the media. They understand that if they do these things, it just further helps them than if they didn't. They get more benefit out of, I wouldn't say cooperating, but being more approachable in both sense than taking the other road, I'll say. And kind of a last note, I don't know how much longer you want to go, Frank, but I know Matt, we weren't able to get a hold of Matt. But the other thing about this whole CFL situation we're talking about, and somebody brought this up in terms of other leagues, when you have only one media network invested in your league, that does not help your league when you're trying to get the word out about your league. And I still think, as much, and look, TSN has been a great partner for the CFL. Their broadcasts have been, their broadcasts are great, but that's literally the only investment I feel like they're getting.
How many other sports, David, to help with what you're saying? How many other sports? Basketball, they have just one. Do they have just one network?
Nope.
Football, NFL, do they have just one network?
Nope.
NHL, do they have just one network?
Nope.
This is where I might trip a little.
The Blue Jays have only one network.
They only have, the league.
Doesn't.
We're looking at the league. They have more than one. I was gonna trip on MLS because I'm not really that sure.
MLS in Canada only has one network. The Blue Jays have one network, but the Blue Jays are not like any other team in that regard because they're owned by that network.
Right. Well, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Raptors are on both Canadian networks, and I believe also MLS is on. Maybe not. But what I was saying, then you have the U.S. networks. The whole point and I'm sorry, I probably tripped you up, and I probably tripped the viewers up. The whole point of it is that if more companies that broadcast games are interested in broadcasting those games, it's harder for the fans to avoid seeing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They know about those games more and more because if they're watching one network, they get the commercial about the NFL. They watch another network, they still get a commercial about the NFL. They watch another network, they still get a commercial about the NFL. So the NFL is always in their face and it's always available to them. Not comparing the two leagues, only suggesting that I don't know if the solution is for another network to get involved with the Canadian Football League. I've always felt that should be the case because I would like to see this competitive thing between the two networks in broadcasting CFL games. I think it would only serve the league well. I don't know, how you would convince TSN not to have, they're old school because every sport nowadays, we just established, doesn't have only a network. Like hockey has NBC right now. But hockey suffers from the same thing that the Canadian Football League suffers from, but they have Fox too, local broadcasts and such things. So, there is that other networks in. The teams in the CFL don't have their own TV broadcast rights. Maybe that's something they should enter into. I don't know. Something to expand the interest in and raise the profile of the league. And not just because I carry a microphone or you carry a microphone, but when there are a lot of microphones in front of a player, coach, or an owner of a league, it is more impressive. Don't you agree?
Oh, I think so. It's impressive when there are more microphones and more cameras on you, but let's also not forget we're not just talking about on the TV. We're talking about on websites, podcasts, radio, writers. Unfortunately, only one newspaper covers the Toronto Argonauts on a consistent basis. That is the Toronto Sun, who are a sponsor, who have advertisement through the team.
And also initiated their cheerleaders. They were the Toronto Sun.
Yeah.
The Toronto Sun Argo cheerleaders.
And, I mean, newspapers are kind of a different thing now than they were back in the day. I understand that. But digital's still a big thing for a lot of these leagues because people like to click. There's a lot of clicks out there. Unfortunately, the CFL does not get enough clicks. I don't know about the CFL.ca stuff, but I know for a fact that when I work for Sportsnet, there's stories I do really well, especially around Grey Cup time. But at other times, I mean, for my site too that I write for, that I cover the Argos with, clicks are not there for a lot of things. And I feel like they should be, because if it's not for me and I'm covering the team, Where else are Argos fans consuming their coverage of their team? They strive for more coverage, and when there is, the clicks aren't there. So you know there's got to be a give and take as well. There has to be a demand for coverage, and I think that the appetite there would allow for more networks to cover it because there would be a desire, an audience for it. And that I think is where the CFL has to figure out, how do they build that audience? How do they elevate that content to want to be consumed by their fans? And I think that's something the NHL, the NBA, like everyone consumes those on a more digital platform, especially now. And I think that's something the CFL has to also figure out.
It's all about messaging, right? The more messages that are out there that bring attention to the game, the more opportunity is for people to know, A, that the game is there, B, when it's happening. And the more messages there are, it gets repeated. There's nothing that we haven't learned in the world of politics today. It's all about messaging and repeating the same message over and over again. Whether it's a good message, a bad message, or an indifferent message, it still has the same impact. That's the amazing thing about the world that we live in today, because we're, as a world, we've become more sophisticated with communication, and we're inundated with it. And if you can't keep up with that inundation, you're left behind. And the CFL, in a way, has been left behind. And that's, I think, what you're pointing at, is to get back in the game, if you will, of communication.
Exactly. It's something that, they're going to have to really push to going forward. The one thing for me, and I'll say the CFL has at least taken notice of me in what I've been doing, my cards with the Argos. They asked me to vote for the All-Stars this year. They asked me to vote on the All-Decade team as a member of the media. They invited me to the media get-together they had a while back. I can't remember exactly when, but when they had one in Toronto. That right there, I mean, they're showing an interest in reaching out to someone like me, which is great. Now let's see what can we do to make me want to invest more time to cover the team. Because that's the other thing too. I'll tell you just straight up, as somebody who covers a team, I will put a lot of effort if I know that there's a desire. I put a lot of effort for my Argo stuff because I know it's just something I'm passionate about. But if I knew that there were a lot of people that are looking for it and clicking on it, you would see a lot more of it from me. I think that's something that has to be taken into account.
Any other topics of discussion? Did we leave anything out? Other than the fact that working on your backyard is one way to occupy yourself when you can't go to CFL games. Me, the same thing. I don't know what everybody else is doing out there with their time that they have left over, other than being on the internet and many complaining about the fact they can't go to CFL games. Next season is going to be interesting. Looking in the future, if we can close out the afternoon talking about the Canadian Football League, looking in the future, what do you see as some of the changes that organizationally needs to happen for the league first, and then maybe we can talk about other teams?
I think first and foremost, the league has to set its sights on how do we get 2021 going. You know what? Randy Ambrosi said that they want to capitalize on a great return of the CFL. They have to do the best sales job to get people to come back, because I guarantee there are people who felt very hurt about the CFL canceling their season.
You believe that? Do you believe there's a lot of people who we see it on the internet all the time. We see people make comments like, well, that's it, I'm done with the CFL, blah, blah, blah.
We do.
You believe that's real, or that's just a facade? I think it's just a facade. I think once things come back, I think 99% of those people will come back.
I think so too. There's a lot of outrage, like people who want to express outrage. I mean, I see it all the time. Oh, I'm canceling my subscription to blah, blah, blah. I always feel like, show me. Show me where the cancellation is, when you do that. I hate people who do that. Especially now, I mean, we won't get into it now. I feel it's a topic for another day. But with everything that's going on in today's world, and people saying, "Oh, I'm done with this league because of what their decisions are," I know that's terrible. I don't think that should be the mindset. I mean, we're seeing it with in Saskatchewan,
I
especially.
I don't think it's real.
No, I don't either.
I don't think that's real. I think that's tainted by the circumstance, the frustration.
Yes.
And I think it's just life bleeding over into people
Yes.
and their lives.
So I think first and foremost, the CFL have to be the best salesman for 2021. When they call season ticket holders, which they're doing now, make it worth their while to come back, to renew. First and foremost, take care of your season ticket holders. And then when you go to get new ones, give them incentives to go there, right? That I think that first and foremost needs to be the focus. And then for teams, make sure that make sure that there's more fan appreciation. I think will be key. Doing things for fans, especially families too. Families have realized that this pandemic has left aside a lot of entertainment for kids, what they can do. If you can make, come to the football game when it's safe to do so, make it worth it for the families to come. And I think that will
in other words, tag on. Maybe you're onto something there, because what they should do is take advantage of the people who will be dying to spend a little extra money to go to the games that they haven't had a chance to go see any games. Because when fans are going to be able to go back to all these different sports, they're going to be bloated, because a lot of people are going to go to games just because it has been that long. And understand the economic constraints that many people have, but I'm just talking about disposable income and the people who have income that because they love sports so much and it's been so long, they got to make up all those games they didn't see by seeing a lot of games right away. That at the very least, at the very beginning. And if the Argos and the rest of the league can jump on those people, David, they might be able to have some full-time fans.
And not only that, Frank, offer some great deals where, hey, you know what? I might not be making a whole lot of money, but this is not actually that expensive for me. This is something I can actually do, even whether it's for one game, whether it's for 3 games. I think that's something. The Argos, I know they've done ticket packs before. I know Edmonton was doing something similar to get the young crowd out there. That you have to give fans some reason to come over, whether it's a ticket group value. I don't know what specifically they can do, but I think there's ways that you can reach the youth by the number one reason why youth don't come is it worth the investment? Make it worth their investment. Even if the game is not exactly the best for them, they at least got something out of the experience.
My phone was just about to die, and that was me struggling with putting a charger in to get it going. And I also turned off the light. There we go. Now it's back. So I'm back to what we were doing. So a little technological issue that I had to get our technicians on. Are meaning me. So you're right. And at the end of the day, folks, it's all about enjoying the game, and the rest of the teams, you've got to make it quick so we can wrap this up. The teams that were successful, like Winnipeg, they've had to wait, recapturing that excitement, along with Hamilton wanting to recapture that, that vengeance, which, the next time we watch the Canadian Football League, it'll be a season towards a Grey Cup in Hamilton. So we know, they'll be very excited. And the other teams like Toronto, we'll see what kind of team they can put forward. They can raise the excitement level at every game and, strike a little fear in the opposition's heart for a change, and how that'll impact on the fans that are there. And I'm hoping that, like we discussed earlier, maybe there's an opportunity here for people who want to go see live sports, and the Argos can benefit from that. Sell a few tickets in advance. You'll be able to come here. We're not sold out. Come and join us. I know that sounds like a semi-negative comment, but you know what I'm saying. Like, hey, here's your chance. We're affordable. If you really want to see live action, come check us out.
Exactly. No, exactly.
If they can feed on that.
They have to. They have to see what people's desires are and what they're willing to spend the money on for it as well. Maybe you'd put out a survey for people. How much would you pay to go watch a football game, and you give them options. Don't let them choose. You give them
Great.
options. Yeah, exactly. But I think there are ways. I think the Argos have always discussed ways that they can do it. They got to go all, put all the options out on the table. All the options out. CFL, you have all these great ideas to grow the league. Throw all of them out on the table right now. Because guess what?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're in a position right now where people think you're vulnerable as a league. You have to show that the league is prepared to come back as strong as it's ever come back.
And the teams that weren't as strong last year, for example, British Columbia, BC, the Lions, that proved that they were going to be they were a better team this year, as did Montreal. This can be a very competitive league, and I think that'll go a long way towards making it tempting for fans to show up live and in person.
I agree. No, I think if you give every fans a reason to go, I think that's been a thing, is if you give fans every reason to go to a game, your team is good, the prices are fair, the atmosphere at the stadium is great, the time of the game is good enough for fans. You've done your part.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Well, I think on that note, David, it was a pleasure for having an extended version of CFL Talk after it's been weeks since we did a program, and I really enjoyed putting this together with you. Thank you for technically putting this together and offering, of course, your support and commentary that I always respect and enjoy. And I only disagreed with you once today, which is one more time than normal. I'm just kidding. He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching this special edition of CFL Talk. See you again next time. Who knows when? If you know, let me know. For David Morassutti, once again, I'm Candid Frank. Thanks for watching.